I came to complete an argument that at the time, I held very strongly. And so when he reached out to me and said, we're doing TEDx again, I said, yes, this is it. Because when I started thinking about it, I realized that for 8 years, I have been quite very restless. Restless over the fact that I started an argument that wasn't entirely correct 8 years ago on the very TEDx stage that I'm on today. And what is that argument? I stood and I declared that the very thing that we have that serves as the very best fuel for growth is hunger. I declare that, in fact, we are at a better advantage as the people who grew up in this city and its environs. Because for an average Warri person, for an average Deltan, you do not need to get some quotes by some philosopher to move, to walk. You do not need to listen to a podcast. Every morning you wake up, the very reasons to grind stares at you at the face. And that argument at the point made a lot of sense. Because look at what it helped me to do. It helped me build a platform that helps us place students into student accommodation in 62 cities in this country. There was a time where we had more than 200 people working on payroll, run by me. At the time, it's 1 year old. And so, yes, that hunger was just enough to start and build. We were everywhere. I was on channels today. I was on this one tomorrow. It was a super sweet ride. But guess what? After 3 years of building all of that, raising money, all of that came to a halt. Why? I realized very quickly that hunger has shapes. And so my talk today, if it has to have a title, should be the 3 shapes of hunger. Yeah. The first shape is the feast. That is that raw hunger, the one that wants to make you punch through anything. It's aggressive. It's selfish. I need to eat. I need to get food. And justifiably so, because look at us. Look at how we grew up. I grew up in an environment where the only time my neighbor would cook outside is when she had a quarrel with another neighbor the day before. Why? Because perhaps during the quarrel, the other neighbor insulted her and said, they're not living very fine. And so she goes to the market and buys the biggest of the meat she can afford that day and comes back and cook right beside the neighbor so she can see the exact amount of meat that she has in the pot. That is where I grew up. And so everything we do is driven by that hunger for me to survive and not really about anyone else. To prove a point, to show, say, me self no small. But the problem with that hunger is it's usually not enough to take you farther. Because what happens very quickly is that it changes shape. The moment you appear to have survived, the shape becomes a shield. What is that? I don't finally survive. I cannot go back. They will laugh me. In my case, it was even deeper than that. This is the very company that I dropped out of school to build. People thought I was crazy. It looks as though they were right. Because indeed I was crazy. Now I had everything to lose. I cannot go back. That would look stupid. Imagine coming back and say, I won't write exam again. What's going on? It was impossible. I had everything to lose. And so I needed to protect whatever it is that I had now. So we had raised follow-on funding from some VCs. We were in Lagos, very close to one of our major markets, the University of Lagos. A sensible thing would be to stay and double down and build. But because I had the shield, I looked at the money in the account. I said, look, oh boy, if we continue paying this rent, I think at the time it was 400,000 a month. This was 2018, 2017 or thereabout. If we continue paying this money, we'll not go last. And if we don't, I don't get where they go. And so what do? Fear became wisdom. Fear became strategy. You know what? We could go back my side. There are buildings so big that this 400K can serve us an entire year rent. After all, a tech company with a build. We can build it anywhere. And so we did just that. We moved back to Ozoro from Lagos What I didn't realize was that we could not move the energy from Lagos to Ozoro. And so while I was trying to shield us from losing, from failing, the very thing that I feared, that I dared, that I dreaded rather, eventually happened. We failed. Or rather, no, that's not correct. I failed. And so I started thinking, what do we do now? Now I'm back to the first shape because I've lost everything now. I need to eat again. For me, for my family, for my old mother, whose only child dropped out of school crazily to go chase some startup and now has come back to say I failed. And so I took to the traditional buying and selling. I borrowed some skills from running a startup. I could do this, fine. Go to China, bring in products. Go to the US, bring in products and sell. I made some money. I was making money. But I quickly realized that I was just surviving. I wasn't really growing because I made a feast. And at the same time, with my shield, it took the third shape to take me out. That shape is an open hand, aka responsibility. I quickly realized that the moment I began to feel responsible for everyone else's survival, I began to thrive. And so what happened? What followed after that is that I began to notice patterns. I started to understand how Africans buy. I realized that there's really not much difference between how we behave at home and the things that drive the decisions for which we buy, for the things we buy. I began to turn all of those insights, those learnings into frameworks. I realized that if you find people's real why, you get them to buy. And so sometimes telling somebody to buy a training or pay for a training might not just be enough reason for them to do that. What if you tell them that, look, if you do this, you prove to all your peers that you self knows more. And it works. And so I codified all of this into frameworks. And as of today, it excites me to mention that businesses that adopted these frameworks far and wide has done more than 20 billion naira in sales from the very thing that I built. What made that happen? It wasn't the feast. It wasn't to make her no loser, make her no to talk. We see these things. It wasn't that. It was the open hand. Responsibility. And it's not even the money that excites me. It's the fact that I recall a lady, Susan, in Kogi, who after a month or so of applying the strategy that I shared in that program, mentioned to me that, do you know that when my husband died during the Boko Haram war in 2014, we were almost sent out of the house. The government had made promises that they were going to take care of the widows and all of that, but that didn't happen. My kids were almost coming back from school until I found you. And now they're back to school. We're even in a better apartment. And so I started thinking, it means I can do more. There are more of these people. The responsibility shape kicked in again. And so what did I do? I decided to build a platform. Rails for everyone else to ride on. As I speak today, there's an Robo girl who is currently helping business people across the country sell on their website. You'll be excited to hear that her name is Ojoro. Only that, Ojoro is not a human. Ojoro is AI. As we speak now, businesses who would be struggling to run their businesses are able to use this. I'm not making so much money from it, but it excites me waking up each day to the testimonies. And so, the argument I like to complete is, right now, in a city like ours, in a state like ours, a lot of us are probably working with the first two shapes. Raw hunger, the feasts. Everybody's aggressive, everybody's in a hurry. And the second shape, when you make some money, make her just keep on, not to talk, just quiet yourself, like my grandmother of late used to say. And that's good. It got me somewhere. But the very thing that would make you blossom is when you become responsible for other persons. And so my challenge is try to begin to build with the third shape, responsibility. Let us be responsible for everyone else, not just ourselves. Because I've realized that the formula to life, and if you think about everybody, is that you give, and then take. Every single person that is rich today gives a lot more. In fact, I believe that poor people are selfish and that rich people are selfless. Because the reason why they have money is because they gave something. It's like the trade by barter system. You can't have yam in the marketplace if you don't have plantain to give. And so let us begin to think responsibly. Let us begin to think about other people, build for other people, not just for ourselves. Because when you think about it, at the end of the day, we are all we have. And so, if you permit me, I'd like to tweak this popular saying that was popularized by Steve Jobs when he said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." I'd like to tweak that a bit to say, maybe let us add a bit more flesh to that. What if we remove hungry and say, stay responsible, stay foolish? Responsible enough to look at things and say, this thing I just saw now, I cannot unsee it. I have to be the one to fix that problem. And foolish enough to do it even if it doesn't make sense. Because at the end of the day, even Bele way full now, we'll see hungry again. Thank you very much.